and I think the process of migration is never ending. It is a rupture, and of course, I mean, there is different types of migration. There is a migration of privilege, and there is a migration because of political, social, economical, climatic, and I think, let's say, my two of my migrations were very specific. Had a very specific reason of getting away from a place that perhaps part of me would like to stay there. Yeah, and it's I mean, of course, when I was the age of 11, it was not my decision. I was I migrated with my parents, but the reasons of that migration was very much felt in my body. We were I was born very close to Chernobyl. We are a Jewish family within the continuous anti-Semitic tension. So there was a very clear reasons of why to move, and the same in Israel with its political ongoing political crisis. I could not perceive myself without this experience, and I don't think it can ever totally leave me. And in that sense, of course, when I choose what to work on, I somehow yeah revisit aspects of my personal experience. And there is a specific quests or questions that I'm carrying within the projects, which are also very much personal. I was not always politically aware, and there was a very clear moment when I was actually doing several projects with the Palestinian and the Druze community in Israel. A kind of realization where I'm at actually became very prominent in my again lived experience, because I had meetings, I had conversations with minorities in Israel, which were totally discriminated. I think there was a certain, let's say, solidarity on the level of almost also a lived memory of how it is to be a Jew in Soviet Russia, for example. I think there is a kind of, there was a kind of an awakening. And from that awakening, I could not go back somehow. Specifically when I, at that point, exactly started to have budgets from the state, responsibility, which I found myself that I have to kind of take, and I have to understand the larger aspects of what it is to be a citizen, an artist, but also a citizen who is actually publicly funded. What does it mean when you're publicly funded? What kind of responsibility you have to this kind of support? So I could not take all these kind of questions for granted. And I clearly, like, I made a promise. I said to myself, as long as I am publicly funded, I'm going to speak about the things that I feel that are most acute in this territory. And this continued to when I moved to Europe. It was clear to me that this is the new territory that I'm now investigating and questioning, carrying the same type of questions I posed working in Palestine. It continuously evolves. I mean, I don't know what is my position towards technique and towards, I mean, I see great value in it, and I see what I do believe that there is value in plurality of languages. So a kind of an exposure to different kind of languages, to different kind of body approaches. But then when I'm looking at my work, it's very much determined I mean, in the last works at least, it's very much determined by the kind of material, the data or archive that I'm starting to work with. And I'm clearly starting to work with materials which are so-called extra aesthetics. It is all, the main quest of the project is actually to understand, so why are you as a choreographer approaching this material? Or what can you, with your choreographic gaze, thinking, practice, can contribute to a specific discourse or a specific information? So I see that this is my quest. The main quest is knowing that I have this expertise, let's say, if I can call them expertise, or if I can call them a way of looking at the world, and how I can apply them and offer another type of gaze, another type of reading, another type of experience with a material which is coming which is coming outside of this domain. Basically, I discovered the list of United through the media. It's actually a cooperation that was done with another artist, Banu Chinatoglu, a Turkish artist who is based in Istanbul, who cooperated with the list and disseminated updated versions of the list in various cities around Europe and also in Turkey, I believe. In 2018, they distributed this list in the Guardian. And this is how I encountered the list for the first time. It's important to say that the work of the organization is already since 1993. And they have been disseminating this list yearly, usually around the World Refugee Day. So first my encounter with the list was like a viewer, like somebody who encounters this data in the newspaper. Eventually, after working with observing the list and starting somehow to question various aspects of it, I also contacted the organization and met with the person who is responsible for the update of the list for some time. It's important to mention that I mean a lot of issues that the list reveals. I try to approach different experts. For example, one of the meetings that I did was with the head of the forensic unit in the Red Cross in relation to the question of the anonymity of most of the entries into the list, because most of the people that are mentioned in the list are unidentified. So I wanted to understand what exactly does it mean, what is exactly happening on the ground, and let's say the encounter is not only with the association. It's an ongoing kind of quest of understanding the situation more in depth and the very different aspects that the list reveals when you read it closely.
È come se in questo caso Arcadi abbia voluto dare l'estremo saluto a delle persone già morte, come l'estremo saluto che si dà, almeno questo è quello che a me è sembrato, ad un innamorato che è stato assassinato. Il coraggio appunto sta nel fare in scena tutto senza nessun tipo di compromesso, quindi non curarsi di chi avrebbe trovato il lavoro lento, quindi questa estrema lentezza per esempio della webcam che avvicina le tombe dei migranti morti, e non curarsi di chi sarebbe uscito dalla sala. Questo trovo che quest'arte senza compromesso, come dire, può essere definita attivismo politico.
Indeed, when I started to look closely into the list, And when our practice, which is also related to the artistic project, was developed, and the practice was, or let's say, the quest was to visit, to find, and to localize and to visit graves of migrants. When we started this quest, I started to notice that the information that I found in the list is sometimes has inaccuracies. For example, I arrived to a grave and I see that the name is spelled wrongly, or I arrived to a grave which, or through internet, I do succeed to find the name. Either because I'm working with the theater and the local assistant from the theater reads the local language and can investigate further into the case. Either it is just there and it's a matter of time when sometimes the name appears, because in the beginning there is no identification and eventually the name is identified. What started to happen that I started to report back to the organization and actually to update the actual list. And this is for me a very important aspect of the project, that it does not stays within the artistic, the enclosed kind of artistic environment, but it really kind of starts a conversation and really affects the actual database that is out there, the actual data that is existing. And it's also important to mention that United is connected to the Red Cross. There is a network of actors that is operating in the around this quest that are collaborating. So it means that I know that the information that I provide to the organization used and can be accessible to people who are eventually, for example, looking for their relatives. And this is the quest that the Red Cross is responsible on or working on, is about restoring family links.
Yeah.
And this is how the project I believe goes beyond the artistic domain and really influences the reality somehow. There is a very big question to ask towards the medium itself, and the medium itself is still admiring the dancing body. It is expecting to see a dancing body on stage. But what do we do when bodies are violated? What do we do when the bodies are disappearing? What do we do when the bodies are made disappear? So I think coming from the field of choreography, and it's a point that needs to be very much questioned. Yes, it's clear for me that when I'm talking about this community, I cannot dance on stage. But then, which kind of questions or which kind of aspects of movement, of choreography I can use in order to still create a kind of a proximity to this situation, and specifically in Acropolis, proximity to these bodies. And what is more choreographic than proximity to a body? And this is what the project is trying to do. It's trying to approach and get close towards a body, a lot of bodies. So somehow, also in real life and on stage or in the virtual space, which is actually a documentation of our real encounters or our real attempts to be in proximity with these bodies, another type of choreography is created. And I think this is what the work is about, is about a proximity to a community of dead, which is all around us actually, and there is a kind of a gesture of bearing a visit, of attempting to get closer, to bear respect, to acknowledge these these deaths which are often unacknowledged. In the live version of the performance, there is another part, another section where there is another text. Actually, there's an extension of the text which the viewers of the online version will not see, but this is very much related. This section relates very much to the theater, and we indeed. In the text, there is a kind of a provocation because we are sitting in the theater, and the voice tells us if we were sitting in the theater. So this would be the moment to applaud, to close the curtain. So we kind of demolish the idea of the theater while sitting in the theater, because we try to demolish also the walls of the theater when we try to kind of transgress the protectedness of this field somehow, and go out and to look for these bodies, and to go and to make this ritual and it is like I mean it's very right, the idea of rituality, because I mean by now we localized the 641 graves, and there is through this repetition a ritual is created, and if we can imagine the approach towards 641 graves as a gesture, there is a kind of an accumulated a rituality towards this process, and I don't think we can finish this project ever, but we just can continue and approach and approach and approach and acknowledge more and more victims of this situation. There is a desire to somehow question also what can be done within a theater or within an artistic practice. Can this practice transgress our comfortable, modes of production, modes of, and in that sense, yes, all these questions are there, are inside of of this project. Yeah. They are by now totally interwoven. The artistic gestures and the archival gesture is actually was developed, were clarified, were articulated in kind of a parallel awareness, let's say, to the power of the archive and to the power of the artistic gesture, the possible artistic gesture. So in this sense, I cannot. What I can claim that perhaps I mean, a lot of debates, but there were also kind of already this kind of question is about the sleepiness of the archive, the fact that the archive is activated only when somebody approaches it, and usually we have this image of the archive being, closed behind doors, in drawers, and only a specific person can access it. I think what we try to do here is actually exactly like to dismantle this quality of an archive, but actually to let it continuously live through the performative gesture. And in this sense, it is being reactivated continuously through its performance. It is being reactivated continuously through the gathering of the data, because the ritual is continuing. I think there is an interesting tension between all this, the limitations of both these notions of the archive and the performance, and the blending that they make in this specific project, And I find it interesting because it's also, and I think I did it also in my work in one of my previous projects, archive, this idea of an embodied archive. Whereas in archive, I'm kind of creating a kind of an arsenal of violence in my body when I incorporate gestures of different soldiers and settlers in the West Bank. Here there is another kind of embodiment of the archive, because the archive is created through the visits, through the approaches towards the graves of the victims of the migration crisis. In the end, archive is still a very choreographic work, because there is a dancing body on stage. So there, a lot of the questions towards choreography that I'm asked now, or towards the absence of movement, were not relevant because the body was very much present. In archive, one of the kind of chants I started to tell to myself during the process is actually the real gesture is always out there. The real movement, we are always in the representation, in the mode of representation in the theater. I always said, like, I could not do it better than them. They do the real action on the ground. Specifically in archive, it was focused on some kind of an arsenal of movements of occupation. So then I think my approach towards the choreography and towards the field shifted a bit, because I'm actually relating to the field of choreography more as an investigative tool. I mean, in Necropolis there is a lot of inspiration, but also actual production of forensics, of forensic evidence. How the theater space or the choreographic practice can become an expertise, a field of expertise that can intervene or can question the real. So I'm not anymore busy with representation. I'm posing much more much more direct and practical questions towards this field. There is something brute, there is something very stripped from any attempt to perform. There is a very direct engagement with the material, a physical engagement with the material, and in order to unleash a kind of or to question some kind of quality which I kind of acknowledge already before that it exists. There is a kind of a corporal, there is a kind of a physical aspect in these type of materials that I want us to all kind of dwell in. Is indeed existing since archive, because indeed I became a bit more rude almost in transgressing the borders of the artistic field. But I'm still very hesitant if to call myself an activism. I don't know why, but there are moments, and this is the moments when this transgression is happening. It happened when actually there was a lot of opposition towards my work in Israel, or when we are contributing to the actual list. There I feel that there is a real activistic gesture, but it's a part because maybe it's my old-fashioned look on it, but for me activism is much more bold than what I'm doing. But we could also question what is activism and how it can be yeah, but at least this is in my perception. There are moments where I feel really that I'm contributing. On one hand, I'm finding myself in a very luxurious situation of having a big studio to myself to sit and to research. On another moment, I'm walking within like a graveyard of hundreds of bodies, and I'm documenting grave after grave. So there is a continuous kind of tension between these two, sometimes very different and very isolated experiences. But I think I try to continuously try to bridge them, and interested by this tension.
Ma esiste oggi il puro attivismo? Non è tanto dov'è il limite fra arte e attivismo, esiste oggi il puro attivismo, cioè delle azioni e dei pensieri in grado veramente di cambiare le cose? Perché sennò tutta l'arte a questo punto è attivista, tutta, qualsiasi, no? Cioè nella fine degli anni 90 si parlava, cioè hanno coniato un termine, se non sbaglio in America, però a proposito, che poi è stato usato peraltro, che si chiamava artivismo, che è questa sorta di linea mediana che unisce l'arte all'attivismo. Quindi io mi farei la domanda più in quei termini lì, e soprattutto forse come dire, il limite fra arte e attivismo lo trovo se c'è questo limite, è fra il fatto che con l'arte non si muore, con gli attivisti invece hanno, o meglio, si mettono nella condizione di sfidare la morte. Cioè l'unica differenza che trovo è questa qui. Poi per il resto bisognerebbe veramente riformulare le domande e darsi delle risposte in maniera diversa.
I see this movement, I'm a bit more at unease when we talk about success, because I don't feel that there is a success, or that it's like human rights. I mean, it's never achieved. It is always in the process of defending it, because there is always violations. There is always transgression of the individual and the collective. And I think also historically we can clearly within the 20th century, but also before. I mean, there was always a tension. Of course, it had different variations throughout history, but specifically in the modernity, I think it's very much linked, and the art which is kind of continuous, confronts itself with the political, or I mean, I'm thinking of documentary theater, which already 100 years ago started to bring this material. So I don't see something new in the sense. Of course, we have now more possibilities. We have more access to information. We have more digital tools we can to do our research, but also to disseminate the research. So I don't see a shift or a success. I see a transformation or continuous somehow process. To always remind us who has the access to the theater, and who has the habits and the time and the means to arrive to the theater. What was interesting in the case of Archive was the audience who did not arrive to the theater, who never saw the show, but who heard about the show, and specifically heard more specifically heard which kind of database is used in the show, which is the video archive of B'Tselem. That specific moment when the work came out, there was a big shift towards a massive mobilization against this organization by the right wing in Israel. And I was somehow in the middle of all this shift. By the way, it's also later on and until now, it started also a movement not only towards this organization, but towards human rights organizations as such. So naturally, being me kind of affiliated, associated with this organization, a lot of the, or some of the targeting went towards me and towards the work itself. But if we talk, as we talked before, this was the most interesting moment of the project, because this was the moment that the project succeeded to exit the theater and steer a certain discussion and create an action outside. Actually, the freedom that I'm experiencing from within the field that I am, and I think the field of choreography proved itself as a very open field that could deploy various types of languages. So actually, on the contrary, I feel myself more and more free because there is a very specific aspect or a very specific way to look at the actual document. There is a very big responsibility towards the actual document because of the content of the type of documents I'm choosing and the type of situations that they are exposing. But there is also there is a big responsibility that I take on myself when engaging with these documents. I feel responsibility towards the people that produce these documents, the people that their rights are defended or promoted through these documents. So I feel that within let's say the tools that I'm having, I'm somehow expanding the quest, or I'm trying to continue actually the original quest of this document, and I find it very liberating in a sense, because I have the possibility to deploy totally different tools which are in the original document in order to reshape it somehow and bring some kind of bring to light some kind of quality or aspect of that specific document. And I find it very liberating, actually. So I don't feel for now at least, I mean, I don't feel that the documentary aspect of my work can disappear. It's on the contrary, but it is, I must say that it takes me a lot of time to choose that document. And sometimes it's a work of months and years and when it arrives, it's kind of very, when I see something and I acknowledge this kind of puzzle in my head, and I really feel that this document can expose and can actually also be allow for a translation which is which I find necessary to do.